which is why we are struggling a little bit, but we are good to go now. So we're going to start.
Okay, it seems like we do have two vertical and properly oriented FB lives going out now. So thank you so much. Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you for tuning in. Happy Women's Day, everybody. I've been asked to do the intro because Manisha said, it's the men who should be really happy that it's Women's Day. So we're getting started on that note. Of course, all of us like to look good. Who doesn't like to look good? Because that also contributes to us feeling good. And Sepalika's whole principle is that when there is health on the inside, it will show on the outside. So let me first begin by introducing the three of us here who are going to try and help solve some of the myths around weight loss and also give you some of the tips that we have found out most efficient and work the best when it comes to weight management. So I'm Mahesh Jaraman, I'm co-founder of Sepalika.com. Sepalika is India's first online chronic disease reversal website. We say reversal because there are a lot of people who help to manage chronic lifestyle conditions like diabetes and thyroid and so on. We are working to solve the problem of helping somebody go from being somebody who's diabetic or having hypothyroid or being obese to completely reversing that condition. And we do this using only natural supplements, diet, exercise, just the things that nature has for us so that we can all live healthily the way we intended, the way man and women were intended to live. That was basically how health was set up originally. That's how our ancestors lived. With me to my left is my co-founder Sharda Agarwal. She is both an expert in nutrition and has been spearheading the polycystic ovary disease reversal program. She's been speaking with the hundreds of women who have benefited from this program. They've lost weight, they've regularized periods. So she knows intimately what we did with those people in order to help them remove their insulin resistance, improve their metabolic profile, lose weight, all of those. And to my right, of course, is very famously known to all of you FRIers, Manisha Kansra Kapoor, and she is, of course, like I said, the guiding force behind FRI, but also somebody who sincerely believes that we are all in this journey together, right? So it's not about X weight is perfect for everybody, or everybody needs to be a certain number of inches or a dress size or whatever. I think we have a wavelength match when we feel that when you're beautiful on the inside, when you're healthy on the inside, when you're doing things that can last you for a lifetime, that's when the beauty shows on the outside as well. So Manisha, over to you, and let's get started.
Okay. Yeah, so hi everyone. Glad that you're all with us on this FB live session. So Mahesh, one of the things that women always struggle with is weight. As someone who's gone through several weight loss cycles myself and tried, I think, every diet that there is to try in the world, we constantly are in and out of diets, and we, lose weight sometimes, but then it comes back again, and sometimes, we hit plateaus and things like that. So one of the things that is really of interest is saying that, what are some of the ways in which we can manage our weight, which are healthy. We don't want to be doing diets which later mess up our metabolism for later years, and yet something which is pretty sustainable. And one of the things that we've been talking about on FRI quite a bit is intermittent fasting, as one of the strategies to lose weight in a healthy way. So just wanted to kind of get your views and on dieting, on fasting, and how do we kind of make weight loss more sustainable.
Awesome. I think that's a great way to kick off. I think FRI is already doing an intermittent fasting challenge at the moment. Some of you are also doing an OMAD challenge, so hats off to all of you.
And coincidentally, so is Sepalika having an intermittent fasting program for weight loss for people with or without medical conditions.
Yeah, because we've often found that with the women that we worked with polycystic ovary disease, it was always a challenge to implement intermittent fasting. So, we were all naturally meant to fast and feast. That is my belief. I've been through both sides of these sorts of arguments should we be eating 6 meals a day? Is fasting terrible for you? Is intermittent fasting really sustainable? I often like to go back whenever there are questions like this. I always know that statistics can be tweaked this way or that way depending upon what is the final conclusion that you want to reach. So I often just look to Ayurveda and to how our ancestors lived. Let's say even 2 generations ago, how many meals did people eat in India in a sustainable manner, right? So I have heard so many stories from friends who used to, trader friends in North India who would say, their Dadaji who used to sit at a shop, run a trading company, a very typical sort of profile, would eat once in the morning at 9:30, and it was like a proper meal. So there would be roti, sabzi, dal, that kind of thing. And then they would not eat anything through the day because they were busy at the gaddi or the place of trade or work. And then in the evening, so they might have a tea, around 3:30, 4, that sort of thing, cup of tea. And then they would come back home at 5:30 or 6, and they would have the second proper meal of the day. So between that 9:30 and 5:30 they're fasting, and again from that, when they finish that meal at 6 to that again 9:30 the next morning, again they're fasting. These are people who used to live very healthy lives, often long lived, 80 plus is what one hears on average. So there is enough evidence even closer home for intermittent fasting being a great way of working. Now, why is the science also supporting the same thing, right? So the idea is the human body can only either use weight or store weight at any one given time, right? So the hormone that does this is insulin. So whenever insulin is at play, it's storing food, and whenever you fast, you take insulin out of the picture so that the stored food can now be eaten as energy. So if you want to use up your stored fat, which is sitting in your liver, in your muscles, in your fat around your waist, if you want to eat up that fat as your source of fuel, you essentially need to stop putting in fresh fuel. Otherwise, the body is so wise, it's always going to use immediate fuel at hand. Why should it go to the deep freezer, which is your abdomen, and try to take the fat to burn when the refrigerator is full all the time, right? So that's the science that I have found. And in our own practice, Sharda, what's it been like with the women with PCOD?
So one of the, PCOD women almost always have an insulin resistance problem. And one of the most successful levers we've used to help women in PCOD lose weight is to get them to go on an intermittent fasting program. So we get them to not eat for anywhere between 14 to 16 hours, and then you can just see the weight loss coming off. And the moment the weight loss starts coming off, you can start seeing a huge improvement in all their other health symptoms. So whether it is your periods, whether it's the acne, the mood swings, the energy levels, they're all going fabulously well, going up north, doing well, just because you've got them to get onto a fasting program.
So just to understand, so while intuitively, obviously, intermittent fasting could be a weight loss strategy, but why is it a healthy way to lose weight? So there are so many ways to lose weight, and most of them work in the short term. One of the questions that we regularly kind of ask on the group itself is 6 hourly eating versus intermittent fasting, and I think both have shown evidence of weight loss. But why is this a healthier way to lose weight as compared to more frequent eating?
Actually, this leads me to one of the first myths that we want to bust, which is frequent meals versus versus fasting, right? And most dietitians and nutritionists, and this is what all our patients come to us saying, that we've been asked to eat every 2 hours. Now, what we need to realize is that the moment you put in even one morsel of food into the mouth, the body is producing insulin, right? The food gets converted into sugar. The job of the insulin is to push that sugar into your cells. So each time you eat, even if you add a teaspoon of milk to your morning tea, you've got sugar levels rising in the body, okay? So which is why we say that whenever you have an insulin issue, whether it's PCOS, pre-diabetes, diabetes, or when you want to lose weight, you need to not eat so frequently, even if you think you're eating healthy food.
So if I could add to that, I think absolutely, Sharda's explained the mechanism through which it goes. To Manisha's question about why is one better than the other, it's just the data, right? So the trick is always look for longitudinal studies. By that, what do I mean? I can make you lose weight pretty much with any of the strategies that you want. Just drink ghee, eat every 6 hours, eat every 2 hours, you take your pick. by moving the levers of calorie restriction, amount of food given to you, how frequently I make you exercise. There are many levers through which in the short term weight loss can be achieved. The question is, when does weight loss continue after 12 months? So my yardstick is, once you are able to keep your weight off for 12 months by continuing to follow the same sustainable strategy, that's when you've really got a situation where you can actually begin to lose weight in a sustainable way. And that is where the longitudinal data lies. I think, Manisha, you need to get the power done on that. But here's what the longitudinal studies show, right? So what happens is, initially when you begin to lose the weight, right? So you've got weight loss that is happening, let's say, with even every 2-hour eating window. Once that happens, the body begins to lose the weight, but soon it begins to realize that you are going to keep giving it food. So it doesn't really need to continue to use any kind of stored fat. So it keeps using up the existing food. So after that initial 3-month euphoria of losing some weight, you begin to plateau. If you look at any of the 5-year studies, any of the 7-year studies of how people truly lose weight, it almost always has to do with fasting. And this is from the work of Dr. Jason Fung, who is an MD, who's an endocrinologist, a nephrologist who is based out of Ontario. He's one of the leading lights. There are several other MDs in the US, in UK, in Canada, who are looking at the longitudinal data. There is a nurses study which is running more than 12 years now, where they have had groups, one group eating 6 meals a day, same number of calories, the other group eating only 2 meals a day, same number of calories, and which is the group that gets sustainable weight loss. And it's always lying with the fasting group. With the intermittent sort of eating group, the people who eat all the time, the weight loss is not sustained.
So essentially what we're saying is that fasting is a great way for long-term weight loss, rather than something which just lasts for 3 months or 6 months while you're on a specific program. So I think some of the other questions around intermittent fasting are also, how often should you do it? Is it something you need to do every day? Is it something you need to do a couple of times a week? When do the benefits kick in? So what's your view on how often should one do intermittent fasting? Is this something to be done every day or a few times? How does that work?
So it really depends upon what you're trying to do it for, right? So the initial spurt of weight loss, you may literally want to do it, so there are various ways to do it. So for example, like Sharda was mentioning, people start with a 12-hour fasting when they work with us in the intermittent fasting program. We move them slowly to a 14-hour fasting, to a 16-hour fasting. And finally, the weight loss, the true kind of deep weight that is stored, the fat will begin to come out when you begin to hit like a 24-hour window. So you're fasting from either breakfast to breakfast, or you're fasting from dinner to dinner. At around that 24-hour mark, true weight loss begins to kick in. That's deep brown stored fat, what we call visceral fat, that begins to come out, right? You've broken down the existing sugar, your body's run out of that, it's next run out of gunky proteins, then it finally goes to fat as a source, okay? Now this is how you kickstart a fasting program when you want to do it for weight loss. In order to sustain what you've achieved, then that's something that completely depends upon what suits your lifestyle. In experience, we have found that any kind of regimen that allows you to do a 16-hour fast at least, say 4 to 5 days a week, and then you're able to go a little easier on the fast the remaining 3 days, especially the weekend, people find it difficult, they socialize and so on. That's a very sustainable way of doing it. But it also depends on your personality. There are some people who tell me, allow me to eat anything on 5 days, and on 2 days I'll listen to anything that you say, right? So that's the 5-2 Dr. Mosley fast, where you're able to eat anything you want on 5 days, but on 2 days there is such a severe restriction of the amount of food you eat, and it's usually so small that you can have only 1 meal a day. So it's an OMAD with a calorie control that happens on those 2 days, and that might suit your personality. You might be an all or nothing kind of person. So there are many ways to achieve that same goal, but whichever way you do it, my money is certainly not on 6 meals a day. It's on one of these various ways of fasting and feasting.
Okay. And some of the questions, again, maybe when people start intermittent fasting, we've had a couple of queries where people I mean, for me, for example, I was afraid that I would hit acidity, as soon as I started fasting, which miraculously didn't happen in my case. But there are a couple of people who said that, not eating for a few hours at a stretch tends to give them acidity. So, what's causing that? What can be done to avoid it? What are your thoughts?
So acidity, which is one of the first signs of the body rebelling. So it's like a detox symptom, right? So a lot of people get acidity. We've had a lot of people who face nausea, headaches, right? So it is the body's way. Now you're actually now telling the body it's craving the simple sugar, it's craving food, because that's what it's been used to all its life, right? And now you've taken it away from the body. Now you have to allow the body to adjust to the new system. Okay, acidity or any of these other symptoms I mentioned are also signs of the toxins being released from the body. So this is why we get people to work with us, because we're guiding them through that period. It can be very difficult, right? So we do a phase of, we teach them how to manage these detox symptoms, so that you're able to tide over. It's not easy, but it will happen.
Okay.
But the fact that you have acidity does not mean that you cannot fast. The body will get used to this new system, and we teach you how to manage during that acute phase. How do you manage the acid coming up and those symptoms, so that you're now teaching your body a new way when it's not eating so often.
So I think the sort of one of the simplest home remedies, and all of you should try this whenever you want to get into a serious fasting regimen. Suppose you're somebody who's used to eating, let's say the gap between dinner and breakfast you're able to tolerate is only 10 hours, right? Now you move it to 12 or 14, and now you've got this acidity coming up in the mid-morning, right? So the trick to avoid that can be to just have a glass of warm water in the morning with a 1 teaspoon of turmeric in it and 4 teaspoons of amla, right? So what are we doing here? It's very simple Ayurvedic home remedy. One of our Ayurvedic doctors, Dr. Bindya, is to be credited for this fantastic remedy that she taught us. So the simple thing is, the amla is basically helping to manage the hyperacidity, right? So it's quelling the pitta. There is too much fire, there isn't fuel for the fire. How do we handle it? So the amla helps to reduce that. The turmeric is an overall system anti-inflammatory. Like Sharda said, when you're fasting, not only does the body pull out fat from the stores, there are also toxins stored in those fats, right? That's basically what a fatty liver often is. So when those toxins come back into the system, then again you're going to get these sorts of symptoms, and turmeric as a system-wide anti-inflammatory can help you handle that. So there are enough and more hacks. Where there's a will, there is a way. And usually in Ayurveda, where there's a problem, there's a home remedy. So all you have to do is to...
So I just want to add, because I think I've seen somebody asking this question, which is that when you say fasting, does it mean that you can't have anything? Of course you can, right? So ideally, we allow people to have water, plain water, either room temperature or warm. You can squeeze a little bit of lemon in it. You can have black coffee or black tea. No sugar, no milk. So I know people complain about no sugar, but even no milk, because milk contains lactose, which again is a form of sugar, right? So black coffee, black tea, plain water, or water with lemon. So that's fine when you're during the fasting period.
So what sort of we mean by that is that obviously these are 0-calorie foods, right? These are foods that do not spike an insulin response in your body. But having said that, since the question came right after the acidity question, I'd like to add a little caveat here, which is that if you're acidic and you're trying to fast, then having coffee at that time may not be a great idea, because it's going to irritate your digestive tract and produce more acidity. There are far more soothing things that can fill your stomach, reduce your cravings, things like spearmint tea or green tea, or any of these sorts of ones that are not that high in caffeine. And especially in some of the acidic tannins and things that you find in some of these substances. So there is, again, like I said, where there is a will in Ayurveda, there's almost certainly a way, and that's the reason why a lot of our guidance initially, while we do dietary supplements and things to make sure you don't lose nutrients during your intermittent fast, at the same time we say, if it's available in your kitchen, it's probably a lot safer, and there are enough and more kitchen remedies there.
Can I address another popular myth?
Yes.
This question has been asked so often, right? You're telling us you want us to lose weight, and yet you guys at Sepalika are telling us to have fats. All our patients are put on good fats. So the fact is, and they say, no, but we've been told you need to have only egg whites, no egg yolk. how can I put ghee on my roti? I'm on a weight loss program. So what do you say? So the issue
In
of
fact, sorry, if I can just, in fact, I was coming to that as my next question, saying that if you are going to have just 1 or 2 meals a day, what should that meal contain, and I mean, how can you make it a meal that is nourishing for your body and complete in nutrients? So, in a sense, what should that composition be? So, fats, as you're saying, is one. So, what should that meal look like?
Okay. So every meal that you have needs to have a combination of what we call as macronutrients, which is carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, and your micronutrients, which are your vitamins and minerals, right? So let's look at the big ones, because that's what we're all concerned, which is carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. As a general principle, we'd like to follow a 40 to 60% of carbs max, and you have 30% of protein and 30% of fats. 90% of Indians, and probably globally, have anywhere between 70 to 80% carbs, right? And fats, unfortunately, are in the single digits. So I've just got a plate now. I'm going to, demo it. So if this is your regular plate, okay, and let's assume somebody's eating, this full. You take a straight line down the middle, right? 1/2 of this is just vegetables. Whether you put it as a sabzi or salad, I'm okay. But 1/2 I need to just...
And potatoes are not vegetables.
And potatoes are not vegetables. And corn is a high, very high on simple sugar. So 1/2 is just vegetables. The other half you're going to divide it into 2 parts. One part is your protein, so either it's paneer, chicken, fish, or dal, and the last part is your roti or rice, which is carbs. So
and where does the fat come in?
So the roti or the rice needs to have ghee on it. You have to have ghee. You need the fats to lose fat. So fats are needed to lose fats.
So let me just sort of add to that, the same plate. So, some of you who might have done quick mental math are wondering, Sharda said, anywhere between 40 to 60% carbs, but when she gave you the roti, it went only to 1/4 of the plate. So hua kya? Where did the numbers not add up? So the trick is, guys, most vegetables are full of carbs. We don't realize it. All the green vegetables that we eat, whether you eat beans, whether you eat spinach, whether you eat bindi, carbohydrates are nature's staple, right? So you need to get the carbs that your Sharda is speaking about, the 40 to 60% of the carbs. Only 25% of those carbs, the 1/4 of the plate, comes from the grain carbohydrates. So that is the roti, the rice, etc. The 1/2 that we're saying is vegetables. You're getting, all the remaining carbs from there. And the remaining 1/4 is where your proteins come in. So that's your kind of balance. So if you thought of an Indian plate, 1/2 cooked and raw vegetables, 1/4 proteins like dal, animal proteins like fish, chicken, etc., paneer, and 1/4 is grain carbs like roti. And like we all sort of agree, all of the stuff needs to be cooked in either ghee or in any of the cold pressed oils that are not industrially processed. This is one of the biggest tricks of weight loss that we found. Changing the cooking medium, the cooking oil medium in the home, is the sure shot way for the entire family to lose weight. So we use ghee, we allow cold pressed oils, so that includes sarson ka tel, that includes peanut oil, that includes til ka tel, coconut oil for those in the south of the country who like that kind of flavor in the dishes. So anything that is cold pressed, not industrially pressed, so that the fats aren't oxidized already. And of course ghee is the master of them all. Mix and match between all of these and just make this one change in your family, and within 2 months you will watch everybody lose weight.
Actually, one related point, because another myth is, especially as vegetarians, we tend to think of dal as a source of protein. Of course it is, right? And it's one of the largest sources of protein, whether it's dal, whether it's chole, rajma. So the entire lentils and beans family are one of the largest sources of protein. What I want people to know is that 70% of the calories sitting in a bowl of dal or rajma is carbohydrates. It's not protein. It's only 30% that's protein.
So that goes towards your carbohydrate count.
Exactly.
So,
exactly. So when you have a bowl of dal, you need to cut the amount of roti that you're having.
So why are we sort of discussing this carb, protein and mix, right? So other than just the fact that Manisha likes to pin us down on the practical stuff, which is all good, finally you're going to eat food, not talk. So the truth is that insulin is spiked by carbs and proteins. Primarily carbs spike insulin, leading to weight storage. So carbs are your number one thing that you want to limit on a weight loss program. The number two thing that you want to limit, and this probably is one of the questions you had, which we discussed before we began the live, is what about proteins? Everybody says protein lena hai. The trainer is telling you protein shake lo, nahi to tumhara kuch nahi hoga. And we often see women who come in, on a weight loss sort of campaign. They're, dedicated to weight loss, and they do begin to lose weight because the trainer cuts out junk food, cuts out carbs. But the mistake that the trainer is often doing is adding protein to a lady's diet, especially with women, when there isn't enough weight training or muscle breakage happening to use that protein, right? It's only when you break muscle and need to rebuild muscle that the body needs that level of protein that is there in a glass of milkshake. It's a very concentrated source of protein. First of all, it's denatured, but I'll let that go. We'll say you can't go and hunt a deer and eat it. It's not going to happen. Chalo, protein shake is sahi. But the issue here is, when you drink that much of protein, what is the third piece of advice that your trainer gives you? He tells you, ghee tel band kar dijiye. So this is the third one, right? So when you remove fats from somebody's diet, when you reduce their carbs and you increase their protein, this is where a double whammy happens. So you lose weight for the first 2 months. After that, the science tells us that in order to break down the protein into amino acids, the body needs fat-soluble vitamins. So these are vitamins available only in good fats. That's vitamin K, E, D and A. So if your ghee and tail is removed, out go your K, E, D and A. Suddenly you've got this new source of protein that your body has to break down into amino acids and doesn't have fat-soluble vitamins to do it. So it ends up using your own available fat-soluble vitamins to break down the protein, and the leftover protein now gets converted into glucose because the body can't store protein. Now it's going to again spike insulin because insulin is called to say ki bacha hua protein you can take, you turn it into sugar and store it into the liver. So you've now got this beautiful scenario where the first 2 months of hard gymming, when you cut carbs, cut fats and increase protein, and you did all that workout, you got a nice weight loss. Or let me put it this way, nice weight loss. And then it began to plateau, and then finally your body says, hello, I'm going to gain weight again. So this is again a nutritional fallacy.
As you're speaking, Shamla's asked that, so can I have a protein shake after a workout?
Yeah. I mean, you certainly can, provided you've done enough in the workout to break muscle. And what does that mean? That means like 20-25 minutes of serious amounts of weights, right? Weights at the level where it hurts. It's not weights at the level of toning. When you're toning muscle, you're not breaking down protein. You need to have enough of a protein breakdown for you to require that additional protein. Otherwise, here's the thumb rule, right? If you start taking protein shakes and you find that your weight is not moving, then clearly the protein is too much for your protein needs. It's getting converted into sugar and it's getting stored as fat. That's where you are.
Okay. So basically what we're saying is that it's only after a really hard weight training workout that one needs a protein shake, if at all. In any case, if one is doing, let's say, what about things like cardio? I mean, if you're running, etc. I mean, do you need protein shake after that?
No, absolutely not. I mean, at least with I've run half marathons. I know enough. I work with enough runners. There is a requirement of protein that is a little more than what a normal person would have, because obviously running is destroying muscle fibers, especially in the leg and so on. But you probably need more carbs than you need protein. And one of the ways of again getting carbs, which I work with all my runner clients and we get fantastic results, take a little bit of carb, add an equal amount of good fat, and now you've got something that's a far more stable source to fuel your next run, to fuel your recovery, all of those things.
So one benchmark would be that to decide how much protein do I need to have in a day is to take your weight in kilograms and multiply it by 0.8. And that tells you how much protein. So let's say you're 50 kilos, right? So you need 50 into 0.8, that you need 40 grams of protein. Now that's all you need in a day. And 40 grams, you've got to remember, let's say you have 2 eggs for breakfast. You're already done with 15 grams of protein, right? And therefore you now only need 25 more grams, and then you add whether you're having the paneer or your dahi, your vegetables, your dal. There is enough. So net, you don't need to pump up your body on protein even though you've gone for a morning run. It's only the real extreme athletes who then need going up to about 1.1 to 1.2 grams, 1.2 grams
body weight.
Yeah, 1.2% of their weight.
Okay. So I mean, I think you touched upon this, so maybe we had a couple of other questions on protein shakes also, saying that, what are therefore the pros and cons of, protein supplements and, because obviously a lot of the gym trainers are peddling
Such a
this
huge
without,
market, no?
without, actually, figuring out whether their clients need it or not. So what are some of the pros and cons of protein shakes?
So I mean, I have often found that, like I said, the trouble with most protein shake use, at least in India that I've seen, is that protein shake use advice often comes alongside a low fat advice as well, right? So if you are somebody who works really strenuously or is working towards some goal, so you spend a lot of time in weight training and impact training, CrossFit, where you're bouncing and you're really breaking up your muscles. If you're one of those people, then along with good protein, you need good fats. Do not ignore the good fats. That's point number one. Point number two, I often prefer far better sources of protein rather than a dehydrated and one powdered thing. Yes, the convenience is there, but there is convenience in, for example, a sattu drink, right? The sattu drink has the carbs and it has the protein. So, it's basically, a lot of people do this who do strenuous labor in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. Sattu is like now it's being rediscovered as a power food and all this. So I would rather you do a sattu shake than, something that's a denatured milk protein from somewhere. God knows what's there in it, how it was made. Just the price is not a yardstick to figure that out. And again, guys, unless we are seriously building muscle, unless we are breaking down muscle and rebuilding it, it's not the wisest thing to take artificially concentrated sources of protein. I'd much rather you get it from meats, and again, not lean meats with fat on them, like a nice steak, or if you're having the chicken, have it with the skin. These are some ideas that sound a little crazy, but hey, working out in a gym would have sounded crazy to my grandfather. So, if you're moving ahead with the times, move ahead and, make sure that you're getting the, the other changes which your grandpa would have never wanted, right? So, I think that prefer the natural sources of concentrated protein over the denatured shakes and things like that, and convenience is not such a big hassle. Trust me, it's far easier. I mean, sattu ka powder and shake is as good as, a protein ka shake. It's the same thing.
So I have a couple of questions back on intermittent fasting. So Vivek has asked that, can I add milk to my tea during the fasting period? I did cover this, Vivek, earlier. No, you cannot. Only because even if you add a teaspoon of milk, the milk contains lactose, which the moment you put that into the body is going to produce insulin, which is what we don't want. We're trying to avoid any blood sugar spike during the fasting period, so no milk. I've seen Gurpriya who's asked that I am on diabetic medication, can I do intermittent fasting? So before I actually come to that answer, I must talk about Dr. Professor Jagannath Dikshit in Maharashtra, who has treated thousands of patients and got them off diabetes medication just through intermittent fasting. I mean, such a fascinating, amount of work that he's done, and unfortunately, it's never published or recognized by the medical journals and the more, let's say, the medical societies in India. So, using intermittent fasting to reverse type 2 diabetes is the surest way of ensuring you reduce your blood sugar levels, not just reduce your dosage of diabetes medication, but even eventually, hopefully, get off it, right? The only thing is, when you're on medication and trying to fast, remember that in an intermittent fasting, we're going to bring your blood sugar levels down. Your diabetes medication is trying to bring that down artificially by using medicines from the outside. So we would recommend that you need to work with your doctor, or ideally a doctor who believes in using diet to bring down diabetes. So don't do intermittent fasting on your own if you're on diabetes medication. You need guidance.
I mean, the point to underline, like Sharda said, is that Dr. Jagannath Dikshit in India, Dr. Jason Fung in the US, doctors like Dr. Mark Hyman, Dr. Mercola have been reversing type 2 diabetes using just fasting as the main solution. The centerpiece of it is fasting, but you have to have a doctor watch over you if you're on medications. Couple of other questions, Manisha, you've got from your...
So there's one question from Deepa, and she's asking about dry fasting.
Okay.
So what about dry fasting?
Okay, so dry fasting is like a very specialized subset of it. I prefer dry fasting when I fast. I've gone up to 72 hours on dry fast. but there is a way to do it. And
So dry fast, just for
Sorry,
people who may not know, is also when in your fast you do not include any water or liquid.
yeah, so nothing goes past your mouth
Yeah.
in this X number of hours when you're doing a dry fast. So I do dry fasting. My wife is from the Jain community, and there it is done in a certain season, right? So it's always in the autumn that dry fasts are practiced, because that is the time when in nature leaves are shedding, old things are being removed from the body. Nature is regenerating itself to go back inwards for the winter. So in a season like that, it can often be very suitable for a dry fast. You don't feel unnecessary, you don't feel too much thirst because summer is out and autumn is setting in. It's a cooler climate. So often you can sustain yourself better at that time. The advantages of dry fasting are huge, okay? But it should be practiced with much greater care, because dehydration is a very real fear. Dehydration is not just loss of fluids, it's loss of electrolytes. You lose sodium, potassium, and therefore you could get cramps, which is because your muscles aren't conducting as well. You could get severe headaches because your brain has begun to shrink. So the brain is actually made up of more than 40% water. It loses volume when you do a dry fast. So it literally pulls down from the skull. There are connections inward to the brain. It khichos downward and you get severe headaches. That said, if you're looking for a certain phenomenon called autophagy. So autophagy is the phenomenon where the human body eats up its own dead and damaged cells, thereby leading to renewal of youth. So you can literally I've seen patients who, under a naturopath's advice, have done dry fasting, and they find that the rheumatoid arthritis gets so much better. The osteoarthritis gets so much better because the body goes to the joints and eats away bad and damaged protein cells, right? So that kind of result is only possible with dry fasting and autophagy, but this is a very, very personal decision. And like I said, because of the severe dangers of dehydration, it should only be done under the watchful eye of either a doctor or somebody who's an expert fasting person.
Vivek also has a question. Can I buy ghee from the market like Amul ghee? You can most certainly buy ghee from the market, but we have 2 or 3 criteria. Number 1, it has to be cow's ghee, right? Number 2, it has to be organic. Most commercially or large, ghee that's produced on a large scale don't tend to be organic. They often use techniques of, in their manufacturing, which is not something that we would want to put inside our bodies. So we would recommend organic ghee, cow ghee, and try and buy ghee from a local farmer's market. Support the local community. Most local farmers will not use pesticides. They don't use the word organic on their bottles because it's too, it's expensive. It requires a lot of process and procedures which they're not capable of doing. But for example, on Facebook, you have plenty of farmers market groups. You can easily go and ask your question there, or in the resources section, you can buy ghee. So buy local, buy organic, but yes, most certainly include ghee in your diet.
That said, I'm glad that we're getting to do this kind of tag team. Because each one of us can bring a perspective which is from the clinic, right? So I see enough and more patients who say, "Kahan se milega, doctor sahab, ye sab?" This is not going to happen. So my thing to them usually is start with Amul ghee. Start with some ghee, which is better than no ghee. But like Sharda said, as you move your game up, what are we all earning for? It's finally to eat good food and live healthy lives, right? And if you can't do that, there's no point. So rather than, find and buy that next expensive Fitbit, which may or may not take you anywhere, find and buy that farmer's market ghee. It's going to really help.
Okay. So one tip for weight loss which works, actually 2 tips from me, because I've personally tried these. So number 1, before every meal, breakfast, lunch, dinner, I want you to take 5 deep belly breaths. So one breath is, so that's breath 1. So when you do take 5 breaths, you've slowed the body down. You've got the body into a state of relaxation. What happens then is that your food digests far better. It does not get stored in your fat cells. Your nutrient absorption is far better. So you have to get the body to a state of relaxation. No checking on the phone, no newspaper reading. Start with 5 deep belly breaths before every meal. Okay?
Yeah, I'm laughing because, I
Don't you?
Yeah,
you
I'm
multitask.
always
We're all
reading
multitask,
something,
yeah,
but
we're all
maybe
reading
not all the
newspaper,
time.
okay?
Yeah.
The second weight loss tip that I've used very effectively, and I know that Manisha does this as well, is switch to eating. I personally prefer eating with my hand. Not only do you put less food into your body, but you actually, the feeling the food, the enjoying the food is, it gets your digestive juices going so much better. Ayurveda, Mahesh is a huge piece on this, on eating with the hand. But wait, let me finish my piece, because if we get him to talk, then he will just go on, right? So eat with your hand. Otherwise, switch out of using a tablespoon. No more tablespoons, use a teaspoon. You will see that the amount of food that you put into your mouth is we all need far less of food than we're actually eating, but we're just eating out of habit, right? Switch to eating with a teaspoon, and you will find that you end up, you don't reach out for the second bowl of dal, or for more of whether it's the sabzi or the raita. You actually feel full far earlier than you stop eating. So switch to a teaspoon instead of using a tablespoon. So those are my 2 tips for weight loss. And works.
To add to what Sharda said, so this is indeed a pet sort of thing with me, because I am a practitioner of acupressure art from South India called Varmam. And Varmam tells us that when we eat with the 5 fingers, we literally stimulate the 5 vital airs in the human body. It tells your brain that food is coming. So be ready with the digestive juices. And it's an amazing process, just eating with hands. Which is why when we get westernized and we get into kata churi and stuff like that, you can end up not really getting the satisfaction from the food, so you crave food again after a little bit of time. That's one. Secondly, another trick, and this works, this is research study work. If you're eating with your hands, make sure that you don't make the next nivala or the gasa of food till you've chewed whatever is there in your mouth at least 16 times. So the trick I teach all my patients is at least 10 minutes per meal. You'd be surprised to find out most of us finish our meals in 6 minutes. That's the average time taken. We work all our lives for that food, and in 6 minutes we have whittled it down. If you eat for 10 minutes, if you actually chew your food thoroughly before swallowing it, your portion sizes automatically comes down, because the first burp is actually telling you that now that I have moved the air out of the stomach in order to make room for the food, if you put in any more, I will not be able to churn the food or digest it. So, which is why Ayurveda says that the first burp, you stop eating. So there's 1/3 food, 1/3 water, 1/3 air. It's a potent weight loss trick.
Wow.
So
these are obviously some simple kind of tricks. Do you have? I have
a very popular question.
Okay.
Simran has asked this, which is, how do I control hunger pangs? Okay. Now, why do hunger pangs occur? Hunger pangs occur because most of us tend to eat very carbohydrate heavy foods. Okay, which means that when you eat these carb-rich foods, they just spike your blood sugar and then they immediately bring it down. Which is why you're hungry literally within an hour or 2 hours after eating, let's say, a plate of poha. So many of us in the evenings tend to have, a sandwich, a poha, some idlis, and they're all carbohydrate-rich foods. And that's why after eating a plate of poha at 6 p.m., we're ready to eat dinner at 8 p.m. No way you should be eating so much food, or rather that frequently. Now, how do I change this? One is, Simran, let's lower the amount of carbs that you're taking in. Ideally, replace the need to reach out for a carb kind of snack to something that is more, protein and fat oriented, right? Fats take longer to digest, they sustain you for longer. Or even within carbs, let's say the more complex carbs, so like a bowl of oats, which means that it keeps you fuller for longer. What do I mean by fats? Let's say you have, even if you're having the poha, I'd like you to cut the poha, the amount of poha you're having by half, but instead add some peanuts to it. Okay? If you're having the idli, instead of having 2 idlis, have 1 idli, but have a nice bowl of coconut chutney. The coconut, which is there, is the fat, which will keep you fuller for longer. Okay? There are other options. Manisha's favorite is to have hummus with carrot sticks. That's her favorite snack. I've even seen her eat hummus just like that, which is fabulous. We recommend to our patients to have mixed seeds. So it's sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, flax seeds. You sort of pre-prepare them. They're soaked. All seeds must be soaked. So they're soaked overnight, they're dried, and then you put them in a little dabba, you can carry them to work, and you have those seeds. Keep away from the carbohydrates and you will feel fuller longer.
And also, Simran, maybe the next time you're craving something, usually when you're craving a specific food, it's your body trying to tell you something. most people don't realize that a craving for a burger or for something chatpata is often your body telling you that you have not given me a steady source of fuel, right? So if you just tell your body it's okay, we are switching fuel sources, so it's going to take a couple of days, but you're going to be fine, you will usually tide over it. The other thing to do, a simple trick, this is practical as well, drink a glass of warm water. See if the craving still lasts. Usually we mistake thirst for hunger. It's a normal human response. So, the two are very linked to each other. So try and see what happens if you drink a glass of water. Often the cravings will go away, 50% of the time at least.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds intuitively also, I guess, correct. Okay, so we have several other questions. One was about, is bone broth allowed during IF? I think I can answer that because I asked the same question to Mahesh, just a few days ago, and yes, bone broth can happily be had. Hopefully, if you're not adding too much else to it, and it can, and of course, I mean, what Mahesh says, if you have bone broth, you can say bye-bye to all kinds of supplements because
absolutely,
it's a really, really rich source of all kinds of nutrition. So.
Bone broth is fabulous. I'm a vegetarian, so can you imagine asking me to have paya soup or bone broth? I hope my mother's not watching this, but I do have bone broth. And there's a great bone broth that I get which is deflavored. So it doesn't smell, it doesn't taste. So for vegetarians, very important. So if you message me on Facebook right after this, right below this video, I will give you the resource for it. But bone broth probably is one of our top superfoods in Sepalika, right?
Absolutely. Even the lady who was asking about dry fasting, I would say if you are non-vegetarian and if there are no religious compulsions, then even if you do like a bone broth every second day of a dry fast, you will get all the minerals, so you need trace amounts of magnesium, calcium, potassium, all the various little things that are there inside the marrow of the bone of the animal, and you're really going to get such a beautifully balanced food that that should help you to dry fast again for the next 2 days. You've got the ability to do that with something that's very wholesome.
Okay. So another question that's coming is, and I think Shada's addressed this before, isn't dal primarily a carb? And I think Shada mentioned that it's about 70% carb, but for vegetarians, it is one of the sources of protein. So the trick is that when you have dal, then cut down the amount of rice or roti that you're having with it, so that you are still in the overall kind of carb limit that you must watch out for.
Absolutely, and one of the other tricks that I use in my home at least is add sabzi to the dal. Yeah. So it becomes then something that you can pick up like a vegetable with your roti or whatever, so it's more filling. So you can balance out the carbs in the dal with vegetable carbs which are non-tuber, not the aloo, not the starchy ones, but the other green veggies. Lauki, for example, in the summer is a fantastic way to add to a dal because you're getting 80% of the lauki is water, but you're still getting some body in the dal which then can reduce the amount of roti that you need to have with it.
So there's somebody who's asked, saying that you've spoken about Rajma and chole, whatever, but they all cause gas. What do we do about it? Great question. One of the things we always tell all our clients or our patients is that remember, all seeds, lentils, all plants try to protect themselves from predators, and human beings are predators. We're trying to eat them, right? In a way as a means of protecting themselves, especially their seeds, they develop something called phytic acid. That's their way of telling people like us, don't touch me. So what we now, at the end of the day, they are, whether all plants are good for us, right? So what we need to do is to take away the bad parts of the plant or the seed or grain, even rice and wheat. So the way to do it is to remove the phytic acid, and what you do is you need to soak it. So all grain, not just Rajma and chole, which we soak just because we think they need that long to cook, but even your rice, even your wheat, ideally they should be soaked and they should be sprouted, even your dals, right? So you need to take, specifically on Rajma, you need to soak it. Next morning you have to throw that water out. When you cook it with two things. Number one is ginger and number two is ajwain. So both of which help people. A lot of people are not able to digest the protein that's sitting there in the Rajma. So you need to add ginger and you need to add ajwain to allow for the proteins in the Rajma to digest so that you don't get gas. And again, Rajma again is huge source of carbs, so please cut the amount of when you have the Rajma chawal, you're cutting the amount of chawal and having more of Rajma. So you're having double the quantity, back to my favorite plate. So you're having more of Rajma and this much of chawal, literally.
And remember again, guys, this is important because don't try to avoid the Rajma at night. This is because I live in Delhi and it's a very, Rajma chawal is like, comfort food.
Yeah.
So the important thing is eat stuff that is difficult to digest during the daytime. Meaning, whenever something is difficult to digest, prefer eating it during the daytime rather than the night, because Ayurveda says that when the sun is high in the sky, the fire is high in your belly as well. You have a greater secretion of digestive acid naturally during the day. So, if you are having the Rajma, cook it the way Sharda mentioned and make sure that you have it during the day and not at night.
Mahesh, somebody asked your favorite question.
Oh, really?
Drinking water during meals.
During meals. Okay, so here's again, I'm just deferring to Ayurveda in all of this, and I have used it in my life. I have recommended it to hundreds of people who have benefited. I don't know if the few who haven't have not told me, but with that disclaimer, Ayurveda and modern science again. See, the beauty is when you back it up with modern science, right? So this is why I love it. 1 glass of water, says Ayurveda, half an hour before the meal. Why do we do that? The stomach's parietal cells, which are the acid secreting cells, begin to secrete acid about half an hour to 40 minutes before your meal. That's the grumbling you begin to feel when you feel true hunger. While the stomach is secreting that, it is worried about secreting too much acid so it doesn't digest itself. This is always a fine balance in nature. So adding that water half an hour before gives the stomach a layer of water which then forms a thin layer with calcium that helps it protect itself from its own acid. So you get a buffering layer. So half an hour before the meal, drink the water, your stomach will secrete more acid, which is meant only for the food, and it will not harm the stomach. Second, Ayurveda says, sip water during the meal, preferably warm water, but it's only sips. You can't drink large quantities because that will naturally dilute the hydrochloric acid. But when you sip small quantities, Ayurveda says, it helps to mix the food properly and for the enzymes to work, the digestive enzymes. So all of them, so the amylase, the protease and the lipase, all three which digest the carbs, the proteins and the lipids, the fats. So all of them get proper ability if you sip water through the meal. Then Ayurveda says 1 hour after the meal, do not drink any water at all. So it calls the first two Amrit and the last one Vish. So if you drink water till 1 hour after the meal, then it's poison. If you sip during the meal, it's Amrit. If you drink a glass of water, 250 ml, half an hour before the meal, it's again Amrit. So that's the sort of science.
Awesome. So we do have some questions which are asking us for recipes, etc. So what we cannot address during this, we will reply to the questions that are coming. One question has come from Pune, who's asking, saying that since I've reduced carbs, I feel low energy when I work out and in my daily chores. And I think that's a fear that people have, कि वो carbs नहीं रहेंगे तो you'll end up feeling tired, headache होगा, etc. So how does one counter that? What should one have instead of the carbs one is having to sustain the
Poonam,
energy?
I want to ensure that when you've dropped your carbs, please ensure that you made up for the source of energy through through vegetables. So you're getting vegetables as a source of energy. You have enough of fats going into your body. So we've mentioned this, I think, over and over through this that's our theme probably, through this entire session, is to ensure that there is, if you're having toast in the morning at breakfast, it needs to have butter, ghee on your roti, ghee with rice. You need to have additional good fats going into your body. So whether it's in the form of almonds and walnuts, whether it's in the form of using coconut, if you're having idli dosa, then the coconut chutney has to go in, or you grate coconut and put it on your salads. If you love avocados and you add avocado, all salads must have, you have to drizzle it with extra virgin olive oil. So that's another source of fat. So you're probably feeling low on energy because you're missing your nutrients. You're missing the carbs, but the carbs need to come from vegetables. You're probably also missing on fats. Fats are a potent source of energy, a far better source of energy and concentrated source of energy compared to carbs. So up the level of fats and switch to vegetables as a source of carbs.
It also kind of depends on how long you've been doing this. So if this is a recent phenomenon, whether or not your body has been able to adjust from moving to carbs to fats is an important thing. So give your body a few days at least, up to a week, to move to be able to switch over from digesting grain carbs for energy to moving to what Sharda said. So it will take you a week or so of eating veggies and good fats for your body to switch over from using just sugars to using fats. This is another trick you can try. If you're doing this before your gym or after, this is a little bit of a hack, may or may not work, so again, disclaimer, but try like 2 tablespoons of coconut oil before the workout, right? And see if you still feel that kind of energy dip. If your body is already fat adapted and able to use the coconut oil, you will most likely not feel the dip. That is number 1. Number 2, people who go off carbs often tend to eat smaller portions because they've forgotten how to eat without the roti. Matlab roti ek hai to how to eat this much sabzi, you know, which is Sharda's point that you have to eat the sabzi, but you're probably also lower on salts, isotonic salts. So before the workout, again, see if you want to drink a glass with just a little bit of nimbu and salt in it. No chini, I'm afraid, but you know, this will help to restore the electrolytes. And if you are non-veg, try the bone broth. It's a fantastic way to use as a, you know, transition between the just surviving on sugars to going to fats. The bone broth is a very good thing. Okay, so 2 questions which are follow-up questions, happy to answer. One you've asked, is dry fasting the only way to reach autophagy? No, the answer is no. There are people who do achieve autophagy as measured in blood work and so on through wet fasts as well, but it takes a lot longer. What I meant is a dry fast is a way to jumpstart your body into autophagy because it begins to digest itself, the catabolism begins sooner. But if you have the waters in there, it takes longer, but you can achieve autophagy there as well. The other question was about cancer survivors. Okay, should cancer survivors have milk and dairy at all? I'm afraid it's a very, very confused and mixed kind of data set out there. Individual cancer survivors respond very differently to dairy, you know, just because of the quality of dairy, the level of what we call allergens in the person's body, your own allergic reaction. In general, as a thumb rule, if you're confused as to whether you should take dairy or not, when you take dairy, be very aware if it causes any kind of bloating or flatulence or any kind of discomfort. If that happens to you, it's a high chance that you are allergic or you have a leaky gut, and therefore the dairy may end up causing further growths in your body. The reason that dairy causes those growths, of course, is because dairy milk has something called insulin-like growth factor or IGF, and when that enters into your body, things begin to grow. That's why we give milk to children, because they're growing and it suits them. But with adults, if you're not digesting milk properly, the insulin-like growth factor can go in undigested and it can spike other kinds of growths in the body. So be careful about that, but observe your own reaction to it.
One popular question which Simran has asked when you're on weight loss is, how do I keep away from sugar cravings, especially after a meal, right? The craving to have a dessert or a sweet. So I'll give you the technical bit and I'll give you the practical solution. Normally sugar cravings happen, or the craving for sweet happens because, again, we're eating too much of carbs. What I've said, carbs are all simple sugars and they tend to bring your sugar levels down, and then you're craving for something sweet. The way to do it is to ensure that every meal that you have has the fats and the proteins. The practical solution is this, and this is something again I've tried and we recommend it to our patients and to our clients, is right after a meal, please chew on a half a teaspoon or a teaspoon of saunf. The moment you start chewing that, the need to reach out for a sweet or crave some sugar goes away. The other thing that I use personally is I go and brush my teeth right after the meal. So even if there's dessert that's there or mithai on the table, I just get up and then go brush my teeth. The moment you've brushed your teeth, that there's a fresh feeling in the mouth, you don't feel like eating anything. But just in case either of these are not possible and you're really, really craving something, then have 1 piece of dark chocolate. Dark chocolate is defined as any chocolate which has more than 70% cocoa or
cocoa
butter in it. So 1 piece of dark chocolate will meet your sugar craving without unnecessary. It's probably the healthiest way to meet your sugar
So
craving.
the Indian jugaad for that is also a little piece of gur, which is less than 1 digit in length. So not more than that. But here's a trick for you to try today, Simran, and maybe the rest of you can try it too. Take a piece of roti, chew it 16 times, watch it turn into dessert in your mouth. if you actually eat your food with attention and you chew your food, the desire for dessert automatically goes away. Take me up on this challenge. Just try it. Eat a piece of carb, but chew it really well. Watch it turn into dessert. So your carbs become your dessert.
Shamla says, why do I crave salt, never sugar?
Okay. So that's again a sign, Shamla. So every craving is your body trying to tell you something. So somewhere along the lines, maybe you've had a history of high blood pressure or something because of which your doctors have advised low salt to you. Maybe you retain water. You know, in all this, you may have ended up cutting out healthy salts from your diet. If you've got sufficient amounts of Himalayan salt, or what in India we call senda namak, if you've got sufficient amounts of that, then you're getting 70 minerals throughout the day. Senda namak has 70 minerals, whereas your so-called iodized table salt has just 3. It's just got sodium, chloride and iodine. There's got nothing else. Natural salt has 70 such ingredients, each of which your body needs. So if you're craving salt, it's highly likely that you're craving one of those minerals as well. Somewhere in your diet, you're not getting the nutrition that you need. So it's generally a good sign to then begin adding the Himalayan salt and see if you still have the cravings left.
So we recommend only 2 kinds of salt, no table salt, no iodized salt. Either it's Himalayan pink salt, the pink colored salt that you see in the markets, what Mahesh just spoke about, or the other one is the sea salt. Sea salt is called Jada Namak in Hindi, it's called Kallupu in Tamil. But again, they are not bleached, they are not refined. So they contain the minerals that are critical for a normal functioning of the body. So only sea salt, only Himalayan pink salt, no table salt.
That's something I need to change as well. So.
Yes. Do we have any other questions
I'm
we
done.
need to answer?
I'm done.
Yeah.
So,
I think we've answered most of them, and I think some of them may be a little bit more details. For example, Pooja Mangal has said that my husband is a diabetic, has thyroid, has undergone cancer surgery. Can you suggest something for him?
We'll address these questions.
Yeah, I think the most specific questions we will try and answer, on the chat itself in a while. If there are any more general questions,
should I set the last cat amongst the pigeons?
Yes, absolutely. Please do. Yes.
Okay.
The final.
So the final cat amongst the pigeons, which I think is going to leave us so many comments that we'll spend the better part of tomorrow answering it. Which is breakfast the most important meal of the day? So I mean, honestly guys, there's been so much of research on one side and the other, and it's over the years it's always been in favor of breakfast. Since 1950, when Colonel Kellogg invented his cornflakes and figured out that he needed people to eat breakfast for him to sell his cornflakes, which is when this whole sort of push towards it began. I'm not being foolish and ignoring history just because the facts are suitable to me. I do know that in an agrarian economy where people survived on agriculture, they would eat something before they left for the fields. Often the leftover rice ka mand ka pani in several parts of India before they went to the fields. But imagine what they did there, guys. They tilled a field in the hot sun. I mean, we didn't have mechanized farming. The farmer was literally maneuvering the plow through a difficult patch of land. Imagine the kind of calorie consumption that was happening at that time. So other than whatever he needed to wake up and go and do whatever he did, the farmer needed it in order to work in the field. Even then, I have known from Tamil Nadu at least several people who didn't eat first thing in the morning. They'd wake up before sunbreak, 4 o'clock, begin working because you wanted to get farm work done before the sun was high in the sky. Somebody would come to you around 8:39, by which time the sun would actually be blazing, and you sat in the shade of a tree and you ate that same purana chawal with the mand ka pani and that kind of thing. So that is the idea that India has at least had of a break fast, at least till 50 years ago, or maybe 70 years ago at the most. So, and here remember, what is there in that name? It is breaking a fast. You need to fast long enough for you to be ready to break it. Number one. Number two, who says a breakfast has to be had before 9 a.m.? You are the one choosing when you break that fast, right? So I also agree breakfast is the most important meal of the day. All it means is have it later, break your fast later. What is instead the research trying to tell you, and how are we interpreting this? While you are rushing to school or to office or to whatever you can rustle on the table quickly, and often so many of it will be processed and contain hidden sugars that we don't even know. Most of us consider brown bread is great for breakfast. Brown bread in India is often white bread in which further sugar is added by the form of molasses to give it that brown color, right? We think that is healthy. We think the ketchup without which the kid won't eat is healthy. That ketchup is full of high fructose corn syrup, which is a hidden form of sugar. Butter to hoga hi, jam to hoga hi. Then we hit the the cornflakes and the muesli and the oats and so on. I'm not talking about steel cut oats, I'm talking about the rest of the oats. So you've got a very processed food industry driving breakfast as a meal. So be very careful about what you hear in propaganda. And again, like I said, I'm not against breakfast. I'm only saying, why should I not fast for longer before I break it? That's my only question.
Earn your breakfast.
Earn your breakfast, indeed. So that's my last cat amongst the pigeons, and I know this is going to be a heated discussion because data is there on both sides. This is what we follow. We've had health benefits, and like I posted on my Facebook, that's my only 2 paisa on this.
So just a couple of other questions which have come. Mahesh is on iodine deficiency in case you go and have Himalayan salt. So do you need any an iodine supplement? Or?
Yes, that is a fair question. Yes, indeed, Himalayan salt doesn't have iodine in it, but this whole concept of us not having sufficient iodine is often built up into a hawa. Because we are all told if you don't get enough iodine, you will get hypothyroidism and your throat will swell up, and that's why hypothyroidism is going up. In India, as in the rest of the world, the number of cases of iodine deficiency hypothyroid have gone down to almost 10 to 15%, only in the poorest sections of society. Rest of us all have Hashimoto's thyroid, which is not an iodine deficiency thyroid. My suggestion for getting more quantity of iodine into your diet is by looking at something like spirulina or by looking at some of the higher qualities of bread that you get. So while it is true that iodized salt becomes an easy source of getting iodine, remember that iodine is a very volatile chemical, right? It's in the halide family for those of us who've studied some amount of chemistry. The minute it's exposed to air, iodine evaporates. So अगर आपको अभी लग रहा है कि you're getting iodine from iodized salt, you're not getting much at all. After the first 2 days when you open the salt, which Indian house has such airtight containers ki salt is perfectly preserved in laboratory conditions with iodine in it? It doesn't happen, guys. So you can get other sources of iodine. Some of the organic vegetables, spinach which is grown can be a good source of iodine as long as it's organic. So I wouldn't worry about the fear of iodine deficiency as the reason to switch from normal sort of table salt to Himalayan salt.
I think maybe we can take one last question and then end this, and then if there are no follow-up questions, please post them and we'll try and answer those. So Neeta has another question saying, should fruits be avoided by pre-diabetics?
Yeah, well, we always tend to think of fruit as really healthy, right? Of course, fruit has is a great source of of vitamins and it is healthy. But the most important thing about fruit is the quantity of fruit. So we think fruit is all good and therefore it's okay to have one big bowl of fruit for breakfast, right? Fruit is only one portion allowed in a day, and which when I say one portion, it's half an apple, or it's the small katori of, let's say, whether it's papaya or peaches, or that's the only amount of fruit that's allowed. Number one. Number two, every time you have fruit, so fruit is pure sugar. Even though it's natural, it's pure sugar. It's going to spike your blood sugar levels. So every time you have fruit, we insist that you need to have it with fat. And why? Because the moment when you have the sugar in the fruit along with the fat, it slows down the absorption of of sugar into the bloodstream, and therefore it doesn't lead to those kind of spikes, which is what we don't want. So always have your fruit with a fat. The fat could be either seeds. So whether it's having it with almonds or with pumpkin seeds or melon seeds, or it could be in the form of a nut butter, like an almond butter or a peanut butter. So you take a slice of apple, you can dip it in that. You can sprinkle chia seeds and flax seeds on top of fruit and have them, but never have fruit by themselves, number one. Number two, never have fruit after 4 p.m. In the evenings. Fruit is hard to digest. Number three, and this is the biggest mistake we've seen, I mean, we go for meetings and conferences, we see this happening. People will finish a meal and the dessert counter always has fruit. So we tend to eat fruit after a meal. That's the worst thing that can happen to your body, because fruit takes time to digest. So by the time the fruit is sitting in your body while the rest of the food is digesting, which means it's turning rancid. It's turning bad. It's turning putrid. Sorry. So fruit should never be had after a meal. Ideally, fruit should be had on an empty stomach. Which is, when I say empty stomach, you need to have a good gap of at least 2 to 4 hours from the time you eat fruit to having the next meal.
So it's common sense, guys, right? So fruit is raw. So while yes, it is gentle, it's natural, it's whole, and all of those things. If you combine something cooked like your meal that you're eating with something that's raw like the fruit that you're having, each have different digestion times. So Ayurveda says that one or the other will turn into ama or poison because the stomach is unable to decide which should it digest. Should it give the digestive juices suited for a cooked food, or should it give the digestive juices suited for a raw food? So you do need to make a distinction between something that is uncooked and something that is cooked. You have the salad question. Yes, of course.
Yes.
So the salad question is always the follow-up to this explanation. So which is why we always insist that the salad must have a digestive thing on top of it, like the nimbu, right? So the nimbu literally breaks down the cellulose in the raw food, thereby allowing your stomach to treat it like a partially digested food. That's the reason you put the nimbu. Even the chaat masala. See, India has got this beautiful tradition. So the chaat masala has amchur in it. The amchur is again going to break down the cellulose fibers in the raw salad, helping you digest it better, right? One last point, since it is a very specific pre-diabetic who has asked this, even that quantity of fruit that Sharda, asked you to eat with the nuts, etc., go a little easy on it, because fruits have a special kind of sugar called fructose. And fructose, unfortunately, can only be utilized by the liver in the human body. And most pre-diabetics have a fatty liver condition. So given these three sort of facts, as a pre-diabetic, at least go almost minimal on fruits. Eat only the non-sugary fruits like papaya. Stay away from the mangoes and the chikus and the bananas of the world till your pre-diabetes is reversed. And after that, you can follow what Sharda advised, which is, combining it with a good fat so it doesn't spike your blood sugar.
Okay. So thanks, Mahesh and Sharda. I think this was interesting. And I think, in eating healthy, I think the good thing is that let's focus on what we can eat, which is a lot. I mean, go have, the ghee. And I mean, I've used ghee now as a cooking medium in my house for the last 2.5 years. And so there are a lot of things which, we can eat, which are great. So I think, again, making food choices which, from a sense of empowerment rather than a sense of deprivation, is again a kind of good attitude to have towards your food. And thanks so much for all the tips, and for everyone who's watching, thank you so much. And if there are any other questions that we haven't answered, we'll try and do that over the course of today and tomorrow.
One last point, if you would like to be a part of a vibrant community of people for whom fitness matters, healthy eating matters, but they're doing it using the power of the community, please subscribe to Fit Right In. And if you want to use a healthy way to lose weight through intermittent fasting or through other methods, Sepalika has a program for you, so you can message us right after this video. Any more questions, you can just put it in the on Facebook, and we will answer them for you. Thank you. And
hang on, since everybody gets a plug, I get a plug. Okay, so my plug, statement of fact is that yes, fasting is great, and that's what this discussion is veered towards. We've told you what we feel is are the right things to eat in the feeding window, how long should your fasting window be, etc. Anybody with a medical condition, right, other than diabetes, because diabetes, we are still a little worried that you need a local doctor to help you. So conditions like pre-diabetes, hypothyroid, fatty liver, polycystic ovary disease, any of these, if you have high uric acid, if you've got any of these and you're wondering should you fast and how should you do it, that's what the Sepalika guided intermittent program takes into account. So even if you have no health condition, you're more than welcome, but if you have a health condition, you will especially benefit from the Sepalika program. So we look forward to seeing you if you feel it will work for you. Go ahead, ladies, it's your day, and I shall let one of you end it since I began it.
Okay. No, so happy Women's Day, everyone, today and always. As I always say, every day is Women's Day. So thank you all for watching. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll all be in touch. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, and now you will watch us
come there and switch it off.
Yes. It's a very, very local, from the heart thing, as you can see. Thank you.